5:17 a.m. Macon, Georgia. A warehouse on Riggins Industrial Road. 34 DEA agents in tactical gear lined the perimeter. 12 FBI agents held the rear exits. 2 armored vehicles blocked the loading docks. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed over pallets, stacked floor to ceiling with veterinary pharmaceutical boxes. Ketamine, tramadol, enough to sedate every domestic animal in the southeastern United States, multiple times over. The breach team moved on a single radio command. 4 entry points. Simultaneous. The warehouse staff never made it to the shredders. This was Operation Broken Leash. January 28, 2026. Coordinated raids across 7 states, over 200 federal agents, 34 locations hit in under 90 minutes. At the center of it all, a chain of affordable veterinary clinics that no one had suspected of anything. 87 clinics, 7 states. An estimated $640 million in diverted pharmaceuticals, and a CEO whose pharmacy license had been revoked 7 years earlier. To understand how this operation grew to that scale, you have to go back to 2022. That year, a man named Dale Kirkland filed incorporation papers in Atlanta for a company called Paw First Wellness, LLC. The business model was simple on paper. Franchise veterinary clinics offering low-cost pet care in underserved communities across the Southeast. Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas, Tennessee, Mississippi, and parts of Florida. Kirkland had a background in healthcare logistics. Before Paw First, he worked as a hospital pharmacist at a regional medical center in Savannah. His license was revoked in 2019, following an investigation into missing controlled substance inventory. The Georgia Board of Pharmacy documented shortages of over 12,000 dosage units across a 14-month period. Kirkland was never criminally charged. He simply lost his license and disappeared from the pharmaceutical industry. Or so it appeared. Paw First Wellness opened its first clinic in March 2023 in a strip mall in Valdosta, Georgia. It offered vaccinations, spay and neuter procedures, basic diagnostics, and routine medication at prices roughly 40% below competitors. The clinic was staffed by a licensed veterinarian. It treated real animals. It filed real insurance claims. Pet owners loved it. By the end of 2023, Paw First had 11 locations. By mid-2024, 31. By October 2025, 87 clinics across 7 states. The growth was aggressive but not unprecedented in the franchise veterinary market. State veterinary boards reviewed the clinics during routine inspections. Nothing flagged. The clinics passed. The veterinarians were properly credentialed. The facilities met standards. What no one examined closely was the supply chain. Each Paw First clinic ordered controlled substances through a centralized corporate purchasing system. This is common in franchise models. Corporate negotiates bulk pricing, places orders, and distributes to individual locations. The veterinarians at each clinic submitted their needs through an internal portal. Corporate handled the rest. But the quantities being ordered did not match the quantities being used. October 2025. DEA Diversion Control Division, Atlanta Field Office. Analyst Priya Deshmukh was running a routine audit of Schedule III pharmaceutical distribution in the Southeast when she identified an anomaly in the data. Paw First Wellness clinics were ordering ketamine at a rate of 3.7 times the national average per clinic. Tramadol orders were 4.1 times average. For a chain of basic wellness clinics that primarily handled vaccinations and routine procedures, these numbers made no sense. Deshmukh ran the numbers again. She cross-referenced against patient volume data from insurance filings. Paw First clinics averaged 847 patient visits per month per location. That was within normal range. But the controlled substance orders suggested each clinic was performing complex surgical procedures on virtually every animal that walked through the door, at volumes that would require operating 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. The math was impossible. Deshmukh flagged the report to her supervisor, Senior Diversion Investigator Marcus Cole. Cole had spent 19 years tracking pharmaceutical diversion schemes. He recognized the pattern immediately. Legitimate front, inflated orders. Centralized purchasing to obscure individual consumption. This was textbook diversion with one major difference: scale. Most pharmaceutical diversion cases involved a single corrupt pharmacy, or one rogue physician. This was 87 locations across 7 states, all connected to the same corporate entity. If the diversion was systemic, they were looking at one of the largest veterinary pharmaceutical diversion networks ever documented. Cole sent the preliminary report to DEA headquarters in Arlington, Virginia on October 14, 2025. Within 48 hours, the case was assigned a formal operation name: Broken Leash. The DEA's Atlanta Field Division took lead. FBI was brought in as a partner agency due to the interstate fraud elements. The first challenge was determining who inside Paw First knew about the diversion. The veterinarians at the clinics were licensed professionals. If they were complicit, the operation would need to document that. If they were unwitting, the investigation had to avoid tipping them off in a way that might alert the corporate leadership. DEA dispatched 2 undercover agents to pose as sales representatives for a veterinary pharmaceutical distributor. Their cover company, Southeast Veterinary Supply, was backstopped with a functional website, business cards, and a registered phone line. The agents visited 14 Paw First clinics between October 22nd and November 15th, 2025, offering competitive pricing on controlled substances. What they found was consistent across every location. The veterinarians ordered conservatively. They requested quantities appropriate for their patient loads. They maintained proper logs. They followed DEA protocols for controlled substance storage. The orders the veterinarians placed through the undercover reps were roughly 70% lower than what Paw First corporate was ordering on behalf of the same clinics. That confirmed the diversion was happening at the corporate level. The veterinarians were practicing legitimate medicine. Corporate was inflating orders massively, then intercepting the excess before it reached the clinics. The question became, where was the excess going? November 2025. DEA surveillance teams began monitoring Paw First's corporate logistics hub, a 22,000 square foot warehouse at 4471 Riggins Industrial Road in Macon, Georgia. The building was leased under a subsidiary called PF Logistics Solutions, LLC. From the outside, it looked like any regional distribution center. Loading docks, security cameras, chain link fencing. Agents positioned cameras on 2 adjacent buildings with cooperation from property owners who were given minimal information about the operation. Over the following 3 weeks, they cataloged every vehicle entering and exiting the facility. The warehouse received regular deliveries from 3 licensed pharmaceutical distributors. Large shipments, pallets of boxed medications. These arrivals match the inflated orders placed by Paw First corporate. So far, consistent with a legitimate distribution hub, but between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m., a different pattern emerged. Smaller vehicles arrived and departed through a secondary loading dock at the rear of the building. Specifically, vans painted with the logo of a company called Clean Paws Mobile Grooming. Agents ran the plates. 23 vans, all registered to another Paw First subsidiary called PF Mobile Services, LLC. Clean Paws had a website advertising mobile pet grooming services. It had a booking page. It had customer reviews. Some of the reviews appeared to be from real customers who had actually received grooming services. But the vans were making late-night runs to locations that had nothing to do with pet grooming. GPS tracking warrants were obtained on November 19, 2025 for 6 of the 23 vans. Over the next 2 weeks, agents mapped their routes. The vans traveled to residential addresses, parking lots, storage units, and small businesses across Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and the Carolinas. Many stops lasted under 5 minutes. Drop-offs. If you're watching this video and finding it informative, hit the like button. It helps this channel continue producing investigations like this one. DEA field teams coordinated with local law enforcement to identify the recipients of several drop locations. Many were known mid-level drug distributors already in federal and state databases. Others were new names. The network was extensive. By early December 2025, the investigation had mapped the basic structure. Paw First corporate ordered massive quantities of controlled substances through legitimate distributors. The drugs arrived at the Macon warehouse. Inside, the corporate logistics team separated the medications. Quantities matching actual clinic needs were shipped to the 87 locations. The surplus, which accounted for roughly 72% of total orders, was repackaged and distributed through the Clean Paws van network to street-level dealers across 7 states. The repackaging operation was sophisticated. Seized evidence would later reveal that warehouse workers removed ketamine and tramadol from original pharmaceutical packaging, divided them into smaller units, and placed them in unmarked containers. Some ketamine was further processed from liquid vials into powder form using basic evaporation methods. The powder commanded higher street prices. Agents estimated the pipeline moved approximately $640 million worth of diverted pharmaceuticals over its 3 years of operation. Ketamine alone accounted for roughly $410 million of that figure. Tramadol and other controlled substances made up the remainder. The financial infrastructure was equally calculated. Revenue from the legitimate veterinary clinics, approximately $94 million over 3 years, was used to justify a portion of the pharmaceutical purchases to distributors. The remaining costs were funded through a web of shell companies, each filing fabricated invoices for veterinary supplies, equipment maintenance, and consulting services that never occurred. Money from the drug sales flowed back through a layered system. Cash from street dealers went to intermediaries who deposited it in small increments across dozens of bank accounts. From there, it moved through 3 levels of shell companies before arriving at PF Holdings Group, the parent entity controlled by Kirkland. Agent Cole's team identified $38 million in traceable cash holdings. The remainder of the estimated revenue was dispersed across accounts, real estate purchases, and cryptocurrency wallets that forensic accountants were still tracing. December 2025. The investigation entered its critical phase. Broken Leash had enough evidence to indict Kirkland and several key associates, but Cole and the task force leadership faced a decision. They could arrest the leadership now and shut down the diversion pipeline immediately. Or they could continue surveillance to identify every node in the distribution network, the couriers, the dealers, the financial intermediaries, and dismantle the entire operation in a single coordinated strike. The risk of waiting was real. Every day the pipeline operated, thousands of dosage units of ketamine and tramadol reached street markets. People were using these drugs, some were overdosing. Hospital emergency departments across the Southeast had reported a 31% increase in ketamine-related admissions over the previous 18 months. A portion of that increase was directly attributable to Paw First pipeline. Cole recommended the comprehensive approach. DEA leadership in Arlington agreed. FBI's Atlanta field office concurred. The operation would continue building its target list through December and into January. Raid date was set for January 28, 2026. During December, the investigation made 2 additional discoveries that expanded its scope. First, forensic analysis of the encrypted communications app used by Paw First's logistics team revealed a second tier of distribution. The Clean Paws vans were not the only delivery mechanism. Kirkland had contracted with 3 independent trucking operators who carried diverted pharmaceuticals in hidden compartments within legitimate freight shipments. These truckers moved larger quantities to wholesale buyers in Florida, Louisiana, and Virginia, states outside Paw First's clinic footprint. The operation was bigger than the original 7-state estimate. Second, investigators identified a Paw First employee named Lena Marsh, who served as Kirkland's primary financial architect. Marsh had no criminal record. She held a CPA license and had previously worked at a mid-tier accounting firm in Atlanta. She had designed the entire shell company structure, the invoicing system, and the cash integration methodology. Without her financial engineering, the operation could not have processed $640 million without triggering more aggressive banking alerts. Marsh operated from a home office in Buckhead, a neighborhood in Atlanta. She communicated with Kirkland exclusively through the encrypted app. She never visited the Macon warehouse. She had never met most of the logistics staff. Her compartmentalization was deliberate and effective. One detail that investigators found in Marsh's financial records would later become significant in the prosecution. She had set up a separate account structure that funneled approximately $2.3 million into a charitable foundation called Southeast Animal Rescue Alliance. The foundation made real donations to animal shelters. It hosted adoption events. It had a board of directors composed of local business owners who had no knowledge of its funding source. The charity was a reputation laundering operation designed to give Paw First community credibility and deflect scrutiny. By January 15, 2026, the task force had identified 61 primary targets for arrest. These included Kirkland, Marsh, 14 warehouse workers involved in the repackaging operation, 9 Clean Paws van drivers who knowingly transported diverted drugs, 3 trucking operators, 22 street-level distributors, and 11 financial intermediaries who facilitated the money laundering. The licensed veterinarians at the clinics were not among the targets. Investigation confirmed that none of the 87 practicing veterinarians were aware of the diversion scheme. They had been hired through legitimate job postings, received real salaries, and treated real animals. They were, in effect, the most expensive camouflage in the history of pharmaceutical diversion. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss what comes next. New investigations every week. January 28, 2026, 5 a.m. Eastern Time. Operation Broken Leash went live. The coordination was precise. 214 federal agents divided into 34 strike teams across 7 states. Each team had a specific target location, a specific list of individuals to detain, and a specific set of evidence to secure. Timing was synchronized to prevent any target from warning another. The primary target was the Macon warehouse. 34 DEA agents and 12 FBI agents converged on 4471 Riggins Industrial Road at 5:17 a.m. The facility had 7 employees present, 4 warehouse workers, and 3 logistics coordinators. None resisted. Agents secured the building in under 4 minutes. Inside, they found what the surveillance had predicted and more. 4 tons of pharmaceutical products awaiting distribution. Ketamine in original vials and in processed powder form. Tramadol in bulk quantities. Repackaging equipment including scales, heat sealers, and unmarked containers. A server room containing encrypted communications infrastructure. And $14.2 million in cash, bundled and stored in fireproof safes. Simultaneously, teams raided Kirkland's residence in a gated community in Forsyth County, Georgia. Kirkland was found awake at his kitchen table at 5:22 a.m. He did not resist arrest. Agents seized his personal electronics, including 3 phones and 2 laptops. In a safe in his home office, they found an additional $6.8 million in cash and documents detailing the franchise's real financial structure, a parallel set of books that Kirkland maintained personally. Lena Marsh was arrested at her Buckhead residence at 5:19 a.m. She attempted to destroy a laptop by submerging it in her bathtub. Agents recovered the device. FBI digital forensics teams later extracted approximately 80% of its data, including detailed records of over 200 shell company transactions. Across the 7 states, teams executed the remaining raids throughout the morning. 11 Clean Paws vans were intercepted on roads, some in mid-delivery. Storage units in 4 cities were opened, revealing additional pharmaceutical stockpiles and cash reserves. By noon, 57 of the 61 targets were in federal custody. 4 individuals were not located during the raids. 2 Clean Paws drivers had not reported for their routes that morning and were not at their registered addresses. 1 financial intermediary based in Charlotte, North Carolina, had left the country 3 days earlier on a flight to Panama. A 4th target, a wholesale distributor in Jacksonville, Florida, was found to have vacated his apartment sometime in the previous week. As of the current date, 2 of the 4 have been apprehended. The Charlotte intermediary and the Jacksonville distributor remain at large. Federal warrants are active. Interpol has been notified regarding the individual believed to be in Panama. Total seizures across all 34 locations, $38 million in cash. 4 tons of diverted pharmaceuticals with an estimated street value of $87 million. 23 vehicles including 19 Clean Paws vans, the encrypted communications server from the Macon warehouse, over 40,000 pages of financial documents, and the personal electronics of Kirkland, Marsh, and 14 other key operatives. The grand jury in the Northern District of Georgia returned a 147-count indictment on February 12, 2026. Charges included conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, operating a continuing criminal enterprise, money laundering, wire fraud, healthcare fraud, and tax evasion. Kirkland faces the most severe charges. As the architect and leader of the operation, prosecutors have invoked the continuing criminal enterprise statute, which carries a mandatory minimum of 20 years and a maximum of life imprisonment. His revoked pharmacy license is central to the prosecution's argument that the entire franchise was conceived as a diversion vehicle from its inception. Marsh faces up to 40 years on combined money laundering and conspiracy charges. Her cooperation with prosecutors has not been publicly confirmed, but court filings suggest she has provided information regarding offshore accounts that investigators had not previously identified. The 14 warehouse workers face varying charges depending on their documented level of knowledge and participation. Several have entered plea negotiations. 3 have agreed to cooperate. The 9 van drivers who knowingly transported diverted drugs face distribution charges with sentencing ranges of 5 to 20 years. Most have retained court-appointed attorneys. 2 have posted bail. The street-level distributors face separate charges in their respective jurisdictions. Federal prosecutors in Georgia are coordinating with state prosecutors in Alabama, Tennessee, and the Carolinas to avoid duplicative charges while ensuring comprehensive accountability. What happened next to the 87 veterinary clinics tells its own story. Following the raids, Paw First Wellness ceased all operations. The franchise licenses were voided. Clinic leases were terminated or transferred. The veterinarians, all of whom had been cleared of involvement, were left without jobs. Some found positions at other practices, others struggled. In several communities, particularly in rural Georgia and Alabama, the Paw First Clinic had been the only affordable veterinary option within a 40-mile radius. Those communities now have no low-cost pet care. The impact on the veterinary pharmaceutical supply chain prompted regulatory response. In February 2026, the DEA issued new guidance requiring enhanced verification protocols for bulk controlled substance orders by veterinary franchise operations. State veterinary boards in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee initiated reviews of their inspection procedures, specifically examining whether supply chain audits should be incorporated into routine clinic inspections. The Southeast Animal Rescue Alliance, the charitable foundation Marsh had created, was dissolved by court order. Its remaining assets, approximately $340,000, were frozen. The animal shelters that had received donations from the foundation were not implicated in any wrongdoing, but several publicly distanced themselves from the organization after the arrest became public. If you found this investigation compelling, leave a comment below on what aspect of this case surprised you most. Among the evidence recovered from Kirkland's personal laptop, investigators found a document dated September 2025, roughly 4 months before the raids. The document was a draft business plan for expanding Paw First into the Midwest. Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, and Michigan were listed as target markets. The plan projected an additional 42 clinic locations by the end of 2026. Had the investigation not intervened, the pipeline would have grown. The DEA estimates that the Midwest expansion would have increased annual diversion volume by approximately 60%, pushing the operation's total throughput past $300 million per year. Kirkland's draft plan contained another detail that prosecutors found significant. A section titled Phase 3 outlined a transition from veterinary pharmaceuticals to human pharmaceutical diversion. Kirkland had identified urgent care clinics as a potential franchise model that would provide access to a broader range of controlled substances, including oxycodone and hydrocodone. The plan was preliminary. No incorporation papers had been filed, no properties had been scouted, but the intent was documented. The trial is scheduled to begin in the Northern District of Georgia in September 2026. Kirkland has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Marsh's plea status is sealed. The remaining defendants are in various stages of plea negotiation or pretrial proceedings. Federal investigators continue to trace the financial network. Of the estimated $640 million that moved through the pipeline over 3 years, approximately $38 million has been seized in cash, and another $67 million has been identified in frozen accounts and seized assets. The remaining $535 million is distributed across bank accounts, real estate, cryptocurrency, and cash holdings that have not yet been located. 83% of the money is still out there. The pipeline is shut down. The clinics are closed. 61 people are facing federal charges. But the veterinary pharmaceutical supply chain that made it possible still operates on the same basic framework. Bulk ordering, centralized distribution, limited point-of-use verification. One analyst in Atlanta noticed a number that did not make sense. That was the only thing that separated this operation from continuing indefinitely. The next time you take your dog to a low-cost clinic, the medicine is almost certainly legitimate,